A stranger in a tailored suit walked into my garage on a Tuesday afternoon. He said, "Are you the man who used to work on the Beaumont estate cars? I need to speak with you about something, and I'd rather your son not hear it first." I set down my wrench. What he told me changed everything. Welcome back to the Forgotten Father. Grab your coffee, get comfortable. Remember this. The people in these stories had every chance to do right by the fathers and grandfathers who raised them. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment. Be sure to subscribe. You're going to want to stay till the end. My name is Gerald Boone. I'm 63. I've run a small auto shop off Route 9 in Concord, New Hampshire for 38 years. Boone's Garage. My hands are permanently stained with grease. No soap fully lifts anymore. I drive a 1994 F-150 I've rebuilt twice myself. People pull in for an oil change and see a tired old mechanic in coveralls. They're not wrong about the coveralls. My son Preston works in finance in Boston. He's done well for himself, and I'm proud of that, genuinely. But somewhere along the way, Preston got embarrassed of the garage, of the grease, of a father who still measures success by whether an engine runs true. At his engagement party last spring, in front of his fiancée's family, he introduced me to a room of doctors and lawyers as my dad. He fixes cars. Just that. No warmth in it. Like he was getting an awkward fact out of the way quickly. I noticed. I said nothing. A man doesn't run a small shop for 38 years without learning which battles are worth fighting and which ones you just absorb. What Preston doesn't know is this. 40 years ago, before I opened my own shop, I apprenticed under a master mechanic named Otto Reinhold, who specialized in restoring pre-war luxury automobiles for wealthy collectors up and down the East Coast. I spent 6 years under Otto, learning things about engine craftsmanship most modern mechanics never touch. When Otto retired, he passed a handful of his oldest, most demanding clients to me, quietly, on a handshake. I've kept 2 of those relationships my entire career. One of them is the Beaumont family, whose private collection includes several vehicles worth more than most houses. I service those cars myself, twice a year in a private bay behind my public shop that most of my regular customers don't even know exists. I never told Preston any of this. Partly because Otto taught me that this kind of work speaks for itself and doesn't need announcing. Partly, if I'm honest, because Preston stopped asking real questions about my work a long time ago. The stranger who walked into my garage that Tuesday introduced himself as August Beaumont's estate manager. He said August had passed away 8 months earlier, and his son was now overseeing the family's collection, including a rare 1938 Roadster that needed specialized restoration work before an upcoming exhibition. He said, "Mr. Boone, you're the only person on the East Coast we trust with this car. But there's something else. The new head of the collection wants to meet you personally, and he specifically asked that your family not be told about the meeting until afterward. He said it's important to him that it happens quietly, the way his father always insisted things be done with you." I asked why the secrecy. He said, gently, "I think he wants to understand who you are before anyone else's opinion of you gets in the way. If you've made it this far, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us." Thank you genuinely. I agreed to the meeting. It happened 3 weeks later, at the Beaumont estate itself, a place I'd visited dozens of times over the decades, but always through the service entrance. This time, they brought me through the front. The new head of the collection turned out to be August's daughter, Charlotte Beaumont. A woman in her 40s who'd grown up watching me work on her father's cars as a child, though I hadn't seen her since she was maybe 12 years old. She remembered things about me I'd forgotten I'd ever said. She remembered me teaching her, one summer afternoon decades ago, how an engine is really just a series of promises each part makes to the next one. She said her father used to tell people, at his own dinner parties, about the quiet genius out on Route 9 who understands these old machines better than the men who built them. I had no idea he'd ever said that. Nobody had ever told me. Charlotte asked if I'd be willing to be honored publicly at the exhibition unveiling that fall as the master craftsman behind the collection's restoration. She said her father had wanted to do this himself years earlier, but I'd always deflected the attention every time he tried. She said, gently, "I'm not asking this time, Mr. Boone. I'm telling you my father would have wanted it, and so do I. I thought of Preston introducing me at his own engagement party as he fixes cars, and something in me decided it was time to stop deflecting. The exhibition was held in October at a private gallery in Boston, the kind of event Preston's finance world actually attends. I invited him, without explaining why, beyond "there's something I'd like you to see." He came reluctantly, I could tell, expecting an hour of standing near his father's truck talking about carburetors to strangers. Instead, Charlotte Beaumont stood at a podium in front of 200 collectors and press beside the fully restored 1938 Roadster, and told the room the story of a mechanic on Route 9 who'd quietly kept one of the finest private automobile collections in New England running true for 38 years, on a handshake passed down from a master craftsman before him, never once asking for recognition. Then she asked me to come stand beside the car. I want you to picture Preston's face in that moment, watching 200 people who managed hedge funds and law firms applaud his father like he was the most important person in the room. His fiancée turned to him and said, loud enough for me to hear, "Preston, you never told me your dad was the Gerald Boone. I've read about this collection." Preston didn't have an answer ready. I don't think he'd ever heard anyone call me the Gerald Boone before in his life. Here's the quotable part, the line Charlotte said that made half the room go quiet. She looked out and said, "My father always told me the loudest wealth in this room tonight isn't in the paint or the chrome. It's in a man who spent 40 years perfecting a craft nobody thanked him for, because the craft itself was the thanks." Preston found me by the car afterward, once the crowd had thinned. He didn't say much at first. Then he said, quietly, "Dad, I've been embarrassed of the wrong thing my whole life." I told him the truth. I said I never needed him to brag about me at parties. I said what stung was watching him decide, again and again, that grease under my fingernails meant there wasn't anything underneath worth knowing about. This wasn't a story that needed hard punishment. Preston never did anything cruel on purpose, just something small and thoughtless that piled up over years, the way it does in a lot of families where one generation measures worth differently than the last. The justice here is simpler. It's a son finally asking real questions about a father's life, instead of summarizing it in 4 dismissive words at a party. Preston drives up to Concord most Saturdays now. He started actually asking about the work, real questions, and I've started teaching him small things in the private bay, the way Otto once taught me. He'll never be a mechanic. That's fine. That was never really the point. I still run Boone's Garage off Route 9, still service the Beaumont collection twice a year in the private bay, still drive that same rebuilt F-150. People still pull in for an oil change and see a tired old mechanic in coveralls. Most of them still aren't wrong about the coveralls. They're just missing a little less of the picture than they used to. If you like this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being part of this family.